So as I said, my name is Chris Thurber. I'm a clinical psychologist by training, and I did my dissertation research on homesickness, both the risk and protective factors. In other words, what predicts whether someone is going to have a good adjustment or a tough time when they're spending time away from home, as well as a prevention program. What are the things that we can do that effectively diminish the intensity of homesickness when people are spending time away from home? And then perhaps most importantly, when we're actually away from home, in this case, we're talking about kids at camp, what are the things that are most effective in terms of coping strategies? So we're going to talk about all of those things. And as Sarah said at the beginning, you can type in your questions in the chat window, and we'll be making a recording of this webinar. We are making a recording of this webinar, so easy enough if you know anyone who would benefit from some of what we share tonight, but isn't available as part of our live audience. Share the link with them, and everything will be on the Expert Online Training YouTube channel. All right, so I'm going to get going while Sarah continues to troubleshoot the wonders of technology, but I know she'll be joining us shortly. And I'll begin by saying what's most important for everyone to know, and that is that homesickness is normal. Everyone misses something about home when they're away. There are things about home that we love, and when we're separated from them, we miss them. Completely normal. So what do we do with this? It sounds a little bleak to say, well, everybody feels homesick. The thing to know is that it varies in intensity. It is completely normal to miss those things that we love, but we don't want to be bothered by the intensity of our normal feelings of missing home. So it's critical that we prepare for separations, whether you're talking about a grown-up on a business trip or a 7 or 8 year old at overnight camp for the first time. By the way, those of you who are planning a day camp experience for your son or daughter this summer, I'm glad that you're joining us. Everything that we're going to share with you is just as relevant. Naturally, at a day camp, we're talking just about separations that are maybe 12, 14 hours, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less, but the same phenomena are at work because the timeline is foreshortened. It makes it easier for people to have a day camp experience, a short experience away from home as an initial, say, stepping stone to an overnight experience. Although, shout out to all my day camp director friends, day camp is its own wonderful experience and doesn't need to be a stepping stone to anything. If, day camp is what you most enjoy, that's absolutely what you should stick with. So, what are the things that predict whether a young person is going to have a difficult time away from home? Let me just ask you to sort of type in your guesses, and I'll take a look in the chat window here. While you're typing in what you think are the things that would predict homesickness most reliably, I'm going to text Sarah and see how she's doing. And she's working it out. So we're going to stay calm, and I'm going to just resend her the link as a presenter so she can log in. Then I'll take a look at what y'all have typed in the chat window. So there goes another email to Sarah, and hopefully she'll join us soon. Okay, so let's see what people have said. Hey there, Sarah.
Hi.
All right. So I asked people to type in what were the things that they thought predicted feelings of missing home, right? And so far, people have said overseeing parents, shyness, perceived social support, ability to spend the night out with friends or caregivers. Well, crying at drop-off, I'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because and I'm gonna actually have Sarah do like full disclosure here and do her intro, but we're gonna keep riding the wave here on risk and protective factors. High reliance on parents, family for daily needs, going to bed without parents. So some of you are listing what I would call risk factors. If it's there, it makes it more likely that a person will experience intense feelings of homesickness. And some of you are listing protective factors, which which buffer against strong feelings of homesickness and make it more likely that we'll experience good adjustment. So people are talking about dependence, shy, introverted personality, first time versus not, experience away from home, and length of camp. So basically, I'm congratulating all 70 of you at hitting what are, you should have actually done my dissertation for. It could have saved me a lot of time. But there you go. I collected all this data. And the single best predictive factor is experience. So let's see, Linda Chapman, Rebecca Pricer, lots of people are talking about the sort of, time that you've spent away from home. And that turns out to be the best predictive factor, more so than age. If you said, here's an 8-year-old and here's a 10-year-old, who do you think is going to be most homesick when they go to 2-week overnight camp for the first time? I would say, well, I have no idea, because based on all the research that I've ever read or done, although age can sometimes be a proxy for experience, if you said the 8-year-old spends a lot of overnights at friends' houses and weekend at grandparents' house or something like that, even if he or she has never been away from home, my money's on the 8-year-old because of that experience. And if the 10-year-old has never been away from home before, more likely that that child is going to feel homesick. Some of the other things that are risk factors, an anxious relationship with caregivers or uncertainty about whether their folks are going to be okay. Sometimes parents will inadvertently express a lot of anxiety, and we're going to talk about that in this webinar. As far as I know, personality, being introverted or extroverted, has no predictive power whatsoever. We have well-adjusted introverts and extroverts at camp. Geographic distance has nothing at all to do with whether someone's going to be homesick. In fact, go ahead and give your kid a little test. Ask them after you've calculated it on Google Maps, how far away do you think camp is from where we live? They have no idea. If you're in Europe, ask them in kilometers, same thing, no clue. So it probably doesn't bear on our emotional state because, kids anyway, very few kids have an accurate sense of like mileage. So we're talking about, experience. And now in terms of protective factors, before I let Sarah introduce herself, it's a lot of what you all mentioned, positive expectations and an outlook of optimism about, what this experience is going to entail is the best protective factor along with experience. And so, we're going to talk in more detail about some of these things and help you frame a way that you can maximize the likelihood that your son or daughter will have a wonderful time when he or she is at camp. But speaking of people who didn't necessarily have a wonderful time their first summer, Sarah, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us?
Hi. Quite the introduction. This is maybe one of my like dirty little secrets, because I am such a camp person now, and like through and through. I am a camp director, camp consultant, and trainer. I think I calculated this is my 22nd year at camp this summer. But my first year at camp, so 22 years ago, would have been like 1996, and I was super homesick. I was extroverted, sporty, like artsy, like all the things. But I genuinely missed home. I love my parents, and I love my dog, and I sometimes say I love my sister, at that age. And in 1996 at my camp, you could, instead of spending money in the camp store on like sweatshirts and candy, you could also buy faxes. And I like literally tapped out my store account purchasing faxes to send to my parents to like beg them to A, not let me take the bus home, and B, just pick me up early, like I'm ready to go. And so I had this like very, very tumultuous time my first year at camp, not because anyone was doing anything wrong, and not because my parents necessarily did anything wrong. I just genuinely missed home. So I have a lot of empathy for campers that are feeling that, and know that it was important for me to be able to accomplish being at camp for that 2 weeks. That was a really big deal for me, and led to a lot of other things in my life. But it was hard. It was hard for me, and I don't have any souvenirs from that summer. Just a lot of really sad faxes. My mom saved.
I wonder do you think your parents kept any of the faxes or letters that you sent?
We have all the faxes. There's like illustrations of the bus and how horrible it is, and like lots of punctuation. I'll bring them next time.
You know, your story is emblematic and normal. And I got to say again to everyone who's joining us, feelings of missing home are normal. And that is true for any age. Sarah and I both do a lot of travel as part of our work, training camp staffs and doing consultations. We miss our families. We miss our pets. You have two beautiful dogs.
Thank you.
And, like I asked kids in one of my studies, what do you miss the most? And I'm cracking up because you said, I sometimes said my sister. And if you look at a list of the top 10 things the kids miss the most and the kids miss the least, siblings makes it on both lists.
Really? Depends on the day.
Right? Yeah. And, the other things are things that you would expect. For example, home cooking, my bed or my room at home, my friends from home, boyfriend, girlfriend, screen time, which when I started my research used to be called a TV. And, it's, so you date yourself with a fax.
I miss my fax.
TV. Yeah. So Sarah, are there things that parents could do? Like I talked about some of the risk and protective factors for homesickness, and we'll return to that when we talk about prevention. But you mentioned your parents, and I'm curious what advice you have for all the parents and directors who might share this with their parents. What can parents do to help ensure the most positive adjustment to separation from home? What can parents do to prevent strong feelings of homesickness?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things. I think from a camp director perspective, the first thing I would say is that the camp director, the camp counselors are totally on your team. All of our camp staff at almost every camp I go to have homesickness workshops. They learn how to work with kids who are homesick. Like, they really want kids to enjoy camp.
All right, so parents need to remember that, like, the staff are trained.
The staff are trained, and the staff are genuinely like so passionate about helping kids who are homesick. I mean, first year counselors I've worked with, experienced counselors, they really feel for kids who are homesick, and seriously, I've seen them do amazing things to help kids get acclimated to camp. So I think first of all, trust in these amazing folks that are taking care of your kids, and that they share some great perspectives on helping combat homesickness if it does happen, which it might. So that's the first thing. But also sharing information with the camp directors and the camp staff is really important. Maybe how often they've been away from home, some of those experience factors, but also their interests are really important for camp staff to know. So if your camper is obsessed with, soccer and is really into Harry Potter, that's great information for one of my staff to have if your kid gets homesick, because then I can start a conversation on something they're passionate about and connect with them much sooner than if I just didn't have that information. So the more info you can share on the forums about what makes that kid tick, the more thing camp counselors have to work with. So I think that's something that's often overlooked in these discussions. Just that's going to be really important. Yeah.
And I would add, you mentioned it's important for parents to, when they drop their son or daughter off, say something about the child's previous experience. And to rewind just a bit, this is the time in May for parents to be arranging some practice time away from home. So, overnight at a friend's house, relatives, and do the best you can during that practice time away from home to simulate what the separation at camp is going to be like. Namely, stay off the cell phone, and secondarily, give your kids some practice writing a letter or a postcard. And I completely understand, that letter, which I hope does actually get mailed from grandma's house or, Billy's house or Sally's house is gonna get there after the kid returns home. But it's the idea of adjusting to how are we going to keep in touch. And, leading up to this webinar, you and I are texting each other. so that, we're getting our timing right and figuring out the, technical glitches which always occur. But like,
Always.
we're used to that. We're used to that frequent contact. Parents are used to that frequent contact with their children and vice versa. So simulating the kind of asynchronous communication, like letter writing, that most overnight camps will insist on is important. And, you and I have talked a bunch about pickup deals. Do you want to say anything about that? And we'll, give
Yeah.
moms and dads some advice.
So I'll define a pickup deal for the group?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So a pickup deal is saying, well, basically you would say to your child, this is bad, but I will say what it is. So you'd say, okay, well, I just want you to try camp, but if you don't like it by Monday, I'll come and get you.
Right.
So maybe drop off is on Saturday. You say, just want you to give it a try for 48 hours. Like that's like actually a fairly reasonable thing to say on surface value. But what we found in our experience, I'm sure Chris has found in his actual scientific studies, is that type of pickup deal just makes it really easy for kids to give up. And instead of kind of thinking, okay, how do I get settled in? How do I do this? They're just like, well, I just have to get to Monday and then like I'm out. And so really undermine the counselors.
That's exactly it. I'm glad you added that last part. It undermines, as you said, these passionate camp staff who love the camp, are extremely fond of the kids, want to see them succeed, have been trained and understand that feelings of missing home are normal. They're a very positive reflection of the wonderful attachment that we have to, friends and parents and pets and home cooked meals and all the rest. But the best response to the normal question that all kids will ask, if I feel homesick, will you come and get me? Or what if I feel homesick? As you said, loving, well-intentioned parents might say, well, if you feel homesick, I'll come and get you. Or they're kind of negotiating with a somewhat anxious child and they say what sounds reasonable at the time, but undermines what the staff are trying to do. I can be the most passionate, skilled, attentive, empathic camp counselor, but if the child I'm speaking with says, yeah, that's really nice, Chris, but my mom said that she would come get me if I didn't like it, it's very difficult for that child to commit. Sarah, you said a minute ago, if parents talk about what their child likes, it's much easier for the staff to integrate them, socially and into activities. Right. The more at home kids feel at camp, the less homesick they'll be. But right. I want to say to parents sort of what they should say in response to, if I feel homesick, will you come and get me? And I think the best response is, you know what? I'm sure there will be some things that you'll miss about home. And that's normal. There are a lot of things about home you love. And I think you're going to have an amazing time at camp. You'll miss some things, and you'll also be having an incredible time doing activities that you love, some activities that you've never tried before, meeting new friends, laughing, playing, and enjoying the outdoors. And we've signed up for, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, say the number of weeks. And that's when I will, be so glad to see you again. In between, we'll write letters. So this kind of expression of confidence and optimism is what parents need to do. And you'll feel anxious, of course. And if you have those feelings, don't express them to your child. Talk with another grown-up,
Well, expressing that trust in the camp staff is really important. That the camp staff are going to be an adult they can trust, just like they could trust their teacher or an aunt or an uncle or someone else in their lives. So, I think the extension of trust that the parent places on the camp staff is going to be a really important endorsement for the kid. So, okay, if you feel homesick, here's some things that you can do. Or when I was a kid and I went to camp, I did feel a little homesick too, but I talked to the head counselor and that really helped. She knew what to tell me, that sort of thing. So giving them an alternative plan as well is going to be really important. And sometimes there's like little cheesy things that parents say that really work. Like, look at the moon, we're looking at the same moon. I've had kids like latch onto that and like super cheesy, but like kind of effective, so like kind of what's the plan that you can help them develop if they feel homesick, so they can visualize what they might do in this situation that maybe they're fearing in their mind. Yeah.
So, and you mentioned like looking at the moon, which you can do during the day as well, but maybe
true.
You're at night.
Just wait till the night.
But right, I just want to dispel a myth about homesickness, which is that it only happens to first year campers, or it only happens at night. Look, there's for all of the stats geeks who are tuned in, and I won't ask you to identify yourselves in the chat room, but you can if you want. There's an inverse correlation between homesickness intensity and your activity level, which makes perfect sense. When you're distracted by playing ultimate frisbee or having lunch, there's just not enough space in your finite attentional capacity to think too much about home, which is why we like to keep kids busy. But camp has downtimes, right? There's rest hour, and there's the 15 minutes between swim and second period, or whatever it might be. And some of that downtime occurs at night. Alexandra wrote, we also ask families about bedtime routines so we can help them prepare for differences like, hey, when you go to bed at camp, there's not a TV playing in the background, or she wrote, like, it's dark, other people in the room. What are some of the other differences? Like, because you went to camp in Michigan or Wisconsin?
Michigan, okay. Which is like pretty much Wisconsin. Yeah, like similar experience, right?
Pretty much Maine, pretty much New Hampshire, which is pretty much like, conifers and loons. That's what you get, and fair number of mosquitoes. But what is the, we've both been camp counselors. Can you say, okay, so the nighttime routine is going to be different, but what are the counselors trained to do to help soothe kids who are now experiencing a different bedtime routine?
Yeah, for sure. Well, we train counselors to have a routine in the cabin as well. So there's a sense of, especially for our younger campers, there's a sense of predictability there. And we train our counselors to make sure the kids know how their basic needs are going to be met, right? And so instances that can spur homesickness might be like a bathroom problem, or I can't find my toothbrush, or those little types of things. So teaching the counselors to figure out how do we get into a bedtime routine so the kids know what to expect, so their basic needs are met, makes them feel a lot more confident away from home. If I can't find my toothbrush, all of a sudden, well, my mom always finds my toothbrush. If I can't find it, I really miss her. That sort of thing. How do the counselors set up a routine in the cabin so the kids know what to expect? And then how do the counselors do a little quiet activity in the cabin at night until the kids are super sleepy? So we often teach counselors to maybe read a story each night in the cabin while the kids are in their bunks so they can fall asleep with something going on instead of getting lost in their own mind. And I also train my counselors to stop by each bunk before bed and say goodnight to each camper, to have that kind of personalized good night. We're gonna have so much fun tomorrow. What are you most excited about? That sort of thing. So the kids have security in their routine. They have something to lull them to sleep, and then they have the personalized touch of someone who cares about them, who can stop by and make sure they're okay. So that's going to be really
go to your camp. That sounds.
I know. I want to go to my camp too. Camp's so fun. Yeah. Well, and also, the counselors also have to make themselves very available to the children. And be able to say, if you're worried about anything in the middle of the night, like, I'm a light sleeper, just wake me up. Just say my name. I'll get up. If you need to go to the bathroom, you and a buddy can come with me to the bathhouse, just kind of making themselves as approachable as possible, instead of having a kid who's like, you never want a kid who's up from 12 to 2 in the morning because he's afraid to ask you to go to the bathhouse by himself.
Yeah. Well, it's a good point, and relates to what you said a minute ago about sometimes it can be a small thing that throws a person off balance, and they feel like, it's sort of what kicked off and amplified normal feelings of missing home into a more intense, like, homesick realm. Can't find my toothbrush, or realized, I had a kid tell me, 4 days into the session, maybe my second year as a cabin leader, he didn't have a pillow. And, oh my gosh, we have a stack of pillows that are all clean and ready to go in the health center. But, he was like pretty miserable. And sometimes homesickness has an easy solution like that, but when the staff make themselves available, it's great. And being able to say things, I mean, I would always train my staff to say, look, camp is a pretty fast-paced place, and we're running around having a lot of fun. As busy as I look, I'm never too busy to sit down and talk for a few minutes about how things are going. So, if you're having a conflict with somebody else in the cabin, or you realize that you forgot to pack something, or something's making you uncomfortable, come find me, tell me, and day or night, I will do what I can to help. And even just saying that is wonderful. And parents often ask, speaking of saying things, well, all right, so all this sounds good. We're going to come up with a good communication plan during camp, which means putting together a little homemade stationery kit, because we're going to write letters. We're going to do some practice sleepovers. I'm going to express confidence and optimism. I'm not going to make a pickup deal. I'm going to talk to my coworkers or my partner or spouse about my normal kind of parent anxiety. Involve my child in a lot of the preparation, packing and shopping for sparkly bubblegum flavored toothpaste and all the rest. But it's hard for parents to separate for the first time from their son or daughter as well. What would you say? I think it's fine to use the word homesick, both parents and camp staff, because that's the word that kids use, and they need a label for the feeling. And I specifically did some research looking at, well, does the number of times you use the word have any effect at all on kids' moods or intensity of homesickness? The answer is no, not surprising. It would be awesome if we had this superpower of, like, I could just say a feeling and you would feel it. But that's just not how it works. So normalizing and identifying and naming makes it concrete, not abstract and scary, and you can start talking about what are you going to do. But how do you, somebody asked, like, so what if you as a parent are crying on drop-off day, or the child is crying, or everybody's crying? Like, what do you want to do about that?
Yeah, so I think a lot of times we might envision the plan that we have for the child, but we need a plan for drop-off day, and we need things to look forward to through the week. So I think a lot of the parents I've interacted with are really wrapped up and excited in the kids' experience. This is kind of an exciting week for parents too. Like, parents take this in many different ways. A lot of times parents will be like, I cleaned the house. The house is looking great. I painted the bedroom. And then some parents are like, we went out to dinner every night. We went out with friends. We tried this new bar or restaurant, that sort of thing. So whatever that means to you, setting some goals for the week when your kid is gone can help give you something to look forward to. And
this is like a well-deserved break from full-time parenthood, right?
That's awesome.
If there's still other kids at home, awesome, because that is a new dynamic. Maybe spend a little bit more time with them, but yes, take some time to yourself.
It's part of what you pay for, right? To have a little respite from parenting, because parenting is hard, and that's okay. So thinking of some things that you really want to do is great. And then the other thing I really would love to see more parents think about is what their drop-off plan is. So a lot of parents won't necessarily think about what drop-off day is like, and maybe linger around for too long, or are very over the top, that sort of thing. So maybe envision how you want drop-off to look, and then get out of camp pretty quickly. And if you're crying on the way home, you get to the car earlier, and you can cry a little bit earlier.
That's what Heather says.
And I think that's okay, and that's real. But the parents stick around for way too long. If you look around and there's no more parents there, you've been there too long, right?
Yeah, or I get to demonstrate this in my office. This is like when your kid is off balance, when they start doing this thing, like
bye.
That's like kid code for I love you, but it's time to go. And you have to, it's part of expressing confidence and optimism is I've delivered you to camp, we've checked in, we've gone to the health center, I've talked to your cabin leader or counselor, unloaded things from the car, and now I'm going. Because again, I have so much confidence in your ability to manage this wonderful situation, and yes, the separation that comes with it. But big picture here, what we're trying to do at camp is nurture kids' independence and self-reliance. And there's a reason why camps are not staffed by the kids' own parents, right? I mean, yes, you have occasional like staff child at camp, but we're being very intentional about providing surrogate caregivers who are, high school and college students. And this is a perfect time, by the way, now that I'm mentioning higher education, for me to gloat that one of my dearest friends, Sarah Kurtz McKinnon, is newly minted MBA. So woo,
I am. I graduated. I have no more homework, so I get to do really fun webinars at night now.
No, congratulations. That's so awesome.
Thank you. And it's so much more fun to just be in total camp mode now and not be in graduate school mode. Camp is way great. Experiential education all the way. But Jennifer had a question in the chat that I was really excited about answering, and she said, should we let the kids set up their own space or should we do it with them? I think doing it together is really important for you and for the kid, or at least in my experience. Some kids are going to be like, get out, like, I got this, mom. Like,
read the body language.
Listen to the kid, read the body language. But I had trouble with fitted sheets when I was little. It's in the upper bunk. It's kind of scary. And so I think that gives you a chance to double check the packing kind of deal and like just get the camper settled, makes you feel a little bit better. And it's something to do instead of like standing around. So spend 10 minutes getting the bunk set up. And then Ashley,
you hear what Sarah said, 10 minutes, not 110 minutes, but 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Like literally look at your watch. 10 minutes is appropriate. Talk to the counselor, say hello. I'm so excited to meet you. Maybe ask the counselor, what do you do when you're not at camp? What activities do you teach here? How long have you been at camp? Just a couple of questions for the counselor is nice. It maybe makes you feel a little bit better. Oh, that's Adrian. He was a camper here too. Some parents might latch onto that, and really now I know who's caring for my kid, not just like a counselor. And then Ashley asked about dropping kids off at the bus stop. And that's a great question. My opinion is that once the kids are on the bus, it's really cool to wave from the parking lot and like see the bus off. I think that's appropriate. Chris, I don't know if you think differently on that.
I'm just going to repeat two important things that you said. One is talk with your child about what that drop-off plan is like. What creates anxiety are surprises and twists and turns. And of course, we have to be flexible, and there has to be a lot of room in life in general for spontaneity. Makes it interesting, makes it fun. But it's really great to take a wall calendar. You can make one, you can print one out from websites like timeanddate.com. And put it on the fridge or put it on the wall and say, here we are today, few more days of school or weeks, and then here's, opening day. And as you get closer to opening day, which could be a drop off at a bus, or it could be you drive your son or daughter to camp, or for some of our international campers, you're dropping them off at the airport. But talk through that day. And I don't mean every single detail, but say like, I imagine we're going to leave the house around this time, and we're going to get to the bus around this time, and we'll meet a few other, parents and kids. There'll be camp staff there. Looking at the packing list, I'm looking at, depending on how long the bus ride is, whether they'll have water or whether you're supposed to pack, a snack or something like that. That's all really important. And so is saying, look, so my plan is, help you get your stuff, where it needs to be, and, get onto the bus. Do you think you want like a hug, or a hug and a kiss, or a high five, or, and different families have different traditions of affection and touch. And by the way, kids are going to say like, oh, I want a hug and a kiss, but then you're going to get to the bus and be like, you know what, high five is good, or they're just going to get onto the bus, and please don't you get onto the bus, moms and dads, be like, where's my hug? Because now your kid is mortified, and will pretend to not recognize you. Allow for the fact that they may just get on there. It's like their way of coping. It's their way of demonstrating that they're ready for this. So if you get the Heisman, don't take it personally. take it as an indication that developmentally your son or daughter is right there, ready to go. And like Sarah said, you can wave from the parking lot. And as many tears as there are, awesome. It's like one of the most human characteristics that there is emotional tears. There's, as far as I know, no other organism that has emotional tears. So there you go.
Ah, that makes it really special.
Fun fact.
Yeah.
Fun fact.
Yeah, that is so fun.
Right?
Yeah, you know, there are these kind of like big moments in life, and I think it is okay for our kids to see us kind of, you know, have that type of reaction, because it does show like the tears are, I'm so excited for you. I'm excited for this moment, you know, you're growing up, right? And so that's the message. I think if you cry because you're emotional, I think a really good message to tell the kid is not like, I'm scared or I'm nervous or whatever. Obviously it's like, oh, this is so exciting. You know, it's easy to turn stress or fear into excitement.
Yes.
Especially if you need a little bit of a cover for some like emotions that you're feeling as a real.
And, you know, parents sometimes ask me, well, is it okay to say, you know, drop off or in a letter, I miss you? And I said, of course. You know, what do you expect? What do they expect? And at the same time, don't give them a reason to worry about you. In other words, you can absolutely say, you know, look, you know, Dad is tearful because I know how wonderful this is going to be, and I'm so excited for you, and I know I'm going to miss you, and you know, I know I'm going to see you in 2 weeks or 4 weeks, and I love you so much, you know. And so it gets a positive spin, but nothing you need to hide. What you want to avoid is saying, you know, something ambivalent like, have a wonderful time at camp. I hope I remember to feed your dog. Or like, right, have a great time at camp. I've heard parents say, oh, you know, I hope you enjoy camp. I don't know what mommy's going to do without you. Like, wait a second. So let me just get this straight, Mom, Dad. You want me to go to camp, but your survival is in question? Like, you don't know how you're going to make it? And I understand that's a bit of exaggeration, but it's what the kids are going to fixate on.
Right.
So you want to avoid that. And again, in letters, you can say, I miss you, but don't be over the top. You know, you can talk about sort of newsy, upbeat things, but don't say, you know, your little sister and I love Disneyland. Hope you're enjoying camp, you know.
Well, and also, Chris, I would say, and maybe this is an extreme circumstance, but I've had campers over the years where the parents choose the time where the child is at camp to make an extreme move or do something like that at home. And sometimes it's been worse than others, but sometimes it's logistically well-intentioned. Like while you're at camp, we're moving homes, for instance. And I could see where logistically that's great, like the kids out of your hair, but it puts a lot of extra stress on campers. So really kind of choose those things wisely. And if something does happen in your family, the death of a grandparent, a divorce, or something shortly before camp, just make sure that the counselor, the camp director has that update so that they can respond if someone's a little extra emotional, you know, especially with returning campers. Hey, they've never been homesick before, but this year there's instability at home or that sort of thing. Remember that the outside world affects camp as well.
That's so key. Well, you know, we have a few minutes left, and one of the things that I wanted to share with the directors and with the, you know, with the moms and dads who are online is the homesickness prevention program that you and I have collaborated on. So I'm going to go back to showing a slide here, and let's see if I can. There we go. We're going to get real small here now, Sarah.
Oh, wow.
In the corner.
Fancy.
But yeah, so there's our webinar. But this is the name of the homesickness prevention program is called Prep for Camp. And by program, what I mean is it's a combination of a video, 25-minute streaming video, a 20-minute podcast for parents to listen to in the car after opening day drop-off, and a tip sheet that is a PDF that you can download at your house and just fold in quarters. Kids bring it, pack it. It's got room to write their friends' names and contact information. It's also got the best tips on promoting positive adjustment. So this is available on a website called Expert Online Training. And if I go to, there we go. Oh, look, our pictures maybe, or our videos covering that up, but that's okay. The website is expert, and I even misspelled it, expertonlinetraining.com/prep for camp. But if you go to Expert Online Training, scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, and you'll see a Prep for Camp link. Sarah is also working on getting the Prep for Camp package live on Amazon. I will go back to what I'm most proud of, which is this graph. This shows you the difference between first-year campers at a 2-week overnight camp who receive the standard registration packet and first-year campers who randomized into a different group and watched with their primary caregiver or caregivers the 25-minute video, had parents who listened to the podcast, and the tip sheet wasn't even included in this study. So just those two things, as you can see, about a 50% reduction on average in the intensity of homesickness. And here's another thing to take a look at with that graph. Left unchecked, homesickness intensity for first-year campers tends to increase over the course of 2 weeks, but with the Prep for Camp program, which integrates a lot of the content that we've talked about tonight, the intensity not only begins lower, but it doesn't increase, and in fact, in the days prior to the last 4 or 5 days prior to returning home, actually starts to decrease. So every kid is different. Nobody is following a graph or statistic like this exactly, but the key is that moms and dads, or moms and moms, or dads and dads, or grandparents, or aunts and uncles, whoever the primary caregivers are, they are taking this wonderful, developmental experience of summer camp and doing some preparation and thinking about the messages that they're sending their kids and how they're going to keep in touch. And it's a lot to think about. It's a lot to organize. That's why we have this 25-minute video, which you can watch over and over and over again. And it's, what is it, Sarah, like $9 or something? I mean, we're not pricing people out of the market. It's it's a tube of toothpaste and a toothbrush. That's what.
Which you also need.
Which you also need. Yeah, right. It's not a trade-off.
It's not a trade-off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and Chris, I would add something exciting to me is that homesickness has just been kind of a crapshoot in camping and moving into your dorm in college, in sleepovers. It's just kind of like, well, good luck. Like, I hope my kid doesn't have the homesickness gene. Right. And so the exciting thing is like, okay, are there some things that we can do to learn more about this and help our kids and ourselves prepare? Because at the end of the day, kids are going to need to leave home at some point. And it's a lot easier to start now than to start, that first day in the dorms or the first apartment or that sort of thing. So I think it's cool to think a little more scientifically about how we can help kids through it instead of just like the guesswork and finger crossing that, I know that my parents probably had to do back in those days when I was sending all those faxes.
Well, so to close out, Sarah, can you give people, and maybe we can type it in the chat room too, but say out loud for the recording, your website and your email address if people either have follow-up questions for you or their directors who are interested in having you come to their camp for a day of training?
Yeah, absolutely. So my business is called Kurtz McKinnon Creative. My website is kurtzmckinnoncreative.com, and my email is just Sarah with an H at kurtzmckinnoncreative.com. I love to talk about this kind of stuff, and I would also say that camp directors all over love to talk about this type of stuff. So if you have questions, if you think your kid is going to experience homesickness, if the sample sleepover doesn't go so well, call the camp director. Talk with them, get some more information, learn about how they train, take a tour of the camp with your kid before opening day. There's a lot of things you can do with the camp director's help. So never feel bad about reaching out to the camp staff if you have any concerns, because they want your kid to succeed at camp. Maybe even more. I mean, maybe not more than you do, but certainly to a great extreme. So
yeah, and it's not encouraged, during the camp session to um, call the camp and have the expectation that you'll talk to your child's counselor. You may be able to, if you're really worried, check with somebody in the office, but remember that the staff and the director are out in camp doing their job, taking care of your child, and very few, if any, camps would ever bring a child to the phone, because that really just inflames the feelings of missing home. So that's not the solution. If it's a 7 or 8 week camp, there are scheduled times to call home, and that's reasonable. But calling and talking on the phone is not an antidote to homesickness. But as you said, great for parents to call the camp prior to opening day and get some coaching on the best ways to promote adjustment, and absolutely permissible if you get worrisome letter to call the camp and check in. But remember, whatever letter you get is probably 3 days old, maybe more. Most likely things are better, but you can still check in. It's just going to be sort of, you'll get some
old news.
Old news, right?
Yeah. Well, and I tell my counselors, I know I have so much to say about this. I'm so excited. I tell my counselors at my camp to call if homesick persists more than 24 hours. So also expect that if, for the most part, at most camps, if something is going wrong for more than about a day with homesickness, they'll also reach out to you. So no news is good news typically from a camp perspective. But if you have one of those kids that holds it all in and never would say anything because they never want to bug anybody, maybe that's when you need to be a little more proactive, calling up or that sort of thing.
Good point.
For the most part, if things are going well, you won't hear a peep from the camp. And if you do, it's probably, if you get a phone call from camp, it's also probably like a logistical thing. Like they've broken their glasses or, something like that. So
for me, it was like my braces, I got, the bracket came off or something.
Usually the braces.
So you think I'm geeky now, you should have seen me when I was 12. Like glasses, braces, socks pulled up to my knees.
Oh my God.
But, look at how it turned out.
I had braces till I was 17, so I really